Thank you, Adam. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. It's speaking of making people uncomfortable, it's pretty hot here, so I appreciate you being here. And I'd love to ask with a question. Who of you remembers the last banner ad, clickbait headline, or autoplay video that they saw today while surfing, while being on your phone? Yeah, somebody here. Basically no one. Yeah, no, two, thank you. And there's a reason for that. Because we're being bombarded with people hunting for our attention. And any little attempt out in the open web to actually find something of use, to find that next headline outside of our little filter bubble, pretty much looks like this. It's horrible. Hope you agree. And I thought while spending 4 years in Nigeria, talking, being part of that conversation, not just being bombarded by headlines left, right, and center, being part of an open conversation that just waiting for the conversation to come to me wasn't enough. So I talked to somebody who's on there with a little circle around it. That's my little sister. She's a journalist and a product manager. And I told her, conversation online isn't working out for me. I have to call you and my parents and my friends to find out what's going on at home. I'm not being heard. I'm not sharing my voice anywhere. I don't know what other people are saying. And she had clearly found her own strategy. She was just shouting out loud. That's her within our family. This is probably what you called swag in the 80s, the old guys at the back. She was getting heard. She was shouting. I was not having a good time. Nobody was hearing me, and they definitely didn't think I was cool. So what we came up with, her as a journalist, me just as a random user who's thinking, how can we get people talking online? How can we change and exchange opinions outside of the filter bubble? How do you start? And really our answer was, content producers, content owners, and even the big social platforms everywhere are changing to really engage their users. And the notion we came up with is that it all starts with a question. If you want somebody's attention, don't scream, don't shout, don't make it louder, don't do more autoplay, don't make the clickbait headlines even more sensational. Start with a question. So what we started with at night was a journalistic prototype that would say, what if great content that you're reading actually includes a real question? You're reading something on the chances of Theresa May to hold out in office. Well, do you think she's going to stick out? And what we built is a tool that works on the biggest news sites, integrated in there. You're reading an article, read. You're most definitely not leaving a comment, because only people with too much time and too much anger do that. And you may or may not have come across our tool. You read the article, and probably by then you've already asked yourself, should Theresa May resign? And you got a whole big arc there, and Jeremy Corbyn has a view. You can check it out. Theresa May herself has a view, but most importantly, you have a view. And by moving yourself across that whole arc of opinions out there, you take a stance just like 172,000 users in this single article alone do. So what we found out just trialing around with this tool, we get 150 times higher engagement rates by making people a part of the story, by letting them see what's the breadth and width of the debate, getting you out of what do different positions on this story tell? From Kardashians, how much would you pay for an iPhone, to Theresa May. Giving you that chance to open up your horizon of opinions, and with a single click, letting you take a stance. And that's big news for users, because it allows you to become part of the debate. Your question, your opinion is valued. It also turned out to be pretty sizable news for publishers, because by now we rolled out a whole host of tools, from equity market research analyst, automatic visualization of target prices, to more complicated tools, to the very simple ranking tools. And these guys see that when they engage their users in a meaningful and simple way, they increase engagement and interaction. They double sharing rates, they increase return rates, and they hit editorially on all the right marks that they want to hear, that they need, that great content, great journalists need in order to build a lasting relationship with their users. So that's what we set out building, bootstrapping step by step. For the largest part of it, I was still in Nigeria until we found, whoa, we've got 30 million monthly users now. There's something here. This started as a nice idea for me to finally get heard with my opinions that nobody ever wanted to listen to, as you saw earlier, to something that we say we're changing the way how people consume and interact with information. By now, actually, there's also a fairly solid business model behind it, because if you manage to find a way to get users involved, interact with their buy-in, not by throwing and shouting and screaming at them, but by asking them a question first, your chance to build a relationship with those users is so much greater. So here's an example of our client Toyota, who says, rather than putting out another 17 million autoplay ads this week, let's get into the right editorial content. Let's get to where users are already reading about urban pollution. And we've built a technology to scale this interactive content into hundreds of articles by natural language processing at the same time. And they ask those users, what do you think should be done about urban pollution? What are ways of mobility in the future that you think might have a future or might be solving our problems here? And only to those users I actually think, in my context, in the article I'm just reading, that's actually an interesting question. I want to take a stance. I want to see how others think. And by then, this client of yours actually already has you in a conversation that's meaningful, that's interesting to you, and that you've bought into. And they see pretty incredible conversion rates if they then say, well, why don't you try out our new Prius or something? When you ask that many questions, and by now we're up to 70 million unique users and about 2,800 questions per day asked across the entire network, you actually see a lot what works and you see a lot what doesn't work. And one funny little interesting finding is, if you guys ask people questions and want their attentions, even just in real life, it matters how you ask. One thing is, will Britain opt for a hard Brexit? Gets still pretty serious engagement. But if you put the people you're talking to into the driver's seat and say, I want your opinion, should Europe opts for a hard, Britain opts for a hard Brexit, people are even much more likely, because you give them a chance to come in not with some prediction about the future, but you put them in the driver's seat and let them decide, well, what do I think? What does my voice count in this? And let me have a say in this. Makes a big, big difference. And of course, if you ask that many questions, you see a lot of things that happen. That's just yesterday a little pull out. The questions run from highest trending topics on Bild, G20, obviously really moving the needle in the German debate still. Hamburg is still not on fire, but the political scene is. Do you feel confident about the UK's future after leaving the EU? 88% of Brits say, no, I really do not feel so confident. But it also gets a bit more lighthearted, because everything that people have an opinion on, they want to share their voice with you. Are you a fan of Game of Thrones? Is Lukas Podolsky gonna conquer Japan? And should schools allow students to sell junk food on the premises? And in real time here, not by parsing the comments or sifting through the Twitter sphere, you see very strong agreements around Game of Thrones, super, super strongly polarized view on should schools let their children eat junk food. And very Berlin topic, I'm not sure how many of you caught it. We do also see within seconds, because we speak to 60 million users every month, how are topics and debates changing minute by minute. What do you think of a panda hype? The Berlin Zoo has 2 new pandas. Berliners are getting cold on those pandas pretty quick. They're very excited up front, but the zoo's gotta make them learn some new tricks if it's gotta recoup those rents. So what I want to let you walk away with is, if you're talking one-on-one or trying to build for your content, for your product, whatever, a sizable global audience, it doesn't matter. Taking a step back and not assuming that you've got the answer and just got to blast that answer out there and use programmatic targeting to use the right user in the right time, in the right frame, whatever, but actually taking a step back and saying, what's the context that I want to use users in, that they're already interested in the kind of topic I'm talking about? And then starting with them, asking them a question. That makes all the difference. So what we're trying to do is form a new form of content that lets users actually engage and become a part of the debate. Thank you very much. Questions on that note? Very welcome.
So we have a few minutes for questions. Throw your hands up and we'll throw the speaker at you, the microphone at you. Through the speaker. Sorry, you can stay there. Yeah. Any questions? No, I have one. Okay, so if you're asking people that are on the platform,
Yeah.
and they're already reading a certain dialogue, and then you're asking them for their opinions, does that not reinforce the filter bubble?
Two things. Yes, it can.
Okay.
If only Build is running that poll, they want to know what's our community thinking. But we actually devised a system where the polls are being run across. We work with 15 of the 14 of the 15 biggest publishers, where they run across the entire spectrum. In Germany, that could be from Taz to Faz. In Britain, it might be from the Statesman to the Observer to the Guardian to the Telegraph, whatever. Yeah. And you actually reach such a mass of users that speaking to 80,000 users and being able to pass them socio-demographically actually gives you a pretty accurate pulse. Versus on typical phone, called 0.1% of people, I think, still have a landline and answer it to talk to pollsters. That's a pretty tough game too. Yeah. So yes, you can break out of that filter bubble of just talking onto one community alone.
And question down the back there. Okay, cool. Last question. And where are my catchbox people?
And one here.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, ladies.
Hello.
First.
Hi. Did you do any work on the American election? Did you get to see any of the polling, or were you paying attention to the polling around that?
We were paying attention.
That was like the big...
very much so. By the time the American elections got hot, we didn't have much of an American audience yet. We just opened a New York office. But we did speak to lots of European, British, other users where we do have big user base around, even last November. And we found what interested us about it was huge underestimation of, if you will, the risk or the chance of a Trump presidency happening. So I think all the way up to early November, people did not consider a possibility at all. But then even days afterwards, you ask them, were you expecting this upset victory to happen? And the picture entirely changed. Everybody knew it before. They just somehow failed to tell us exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I think we'll end it there. Big round of applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you.